Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Movie Mates video. I am Matthew, of course, joined by my wonderful co-host and best friend.
Callum.
Hey man, great to see you. On today's show, we have another review, a mini review that is, of another Netflix original, and it is of the name Malcolm and Marie, starring Zendaya and John David Washington. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a bit of a different review because I think we're going to sort of go in deep in this film and unpack a lot of the themes there. So I'm just going to pass over to Callum to explain what those kind of themes are and what we're going to be talking about. So yeah, off to you, man.
Yes, so this film is about a one night in a couple's relationship involving a domestic dispute, and we'll be going into whether we think that the reasons for that dispute is valid, and the resolution or the conclusion of that. That I think there's a lot of talk about here. Some topics I'd rather not talk about, but I think
Yeah.
we'd be remiss in not mentioning them. This may be a long one. I hope not, because I did not enjoy this film, and I don't want to talk about it for that long if I can avoid it.
Yeah, it seems to have divided critics as well. Interestingly, I've saw really some good reviews and some really bad reviews for this one. So I'm gonna be interested to see like who we sympathize more with and stuff like that. But yeah, just before we kick off today's episode, thanks everyone very much who has supported us recently. We really do appreciate that. And yeah, as always, this episode this video because it's a Netflix original. We have a Netflix original playlist as well if you want to check that out with our recent reviews, Space Sweepers and the To All the Boys films as well. So yeah, and of course, time codes and our email is in the description below, moviematespodcast@gmail.com. So yeah, man, if you want to open the floor with your remarks, bud, and I'll chip in where I can.
Are you all right splitting it into non-spoilers and
Yes, of
spoilers?
course, non-spoilers and spoilers. Yes,
Okay.
but I should have said that. Yeah, my bad. I suppose it's because it's
So
a recent release as well. So yeah,
yeah, of course, the immediate factor that you realize when you start watching this film is that it's, of course, in black and white.
it is.
Immediate points off. We've talked a lot about this. Recently, we had Mank. We've talked about older films, Citizen Kane, Casablanca, etc.
Mhm.
And of course, era appropriate back in the day. Of course, that was the technology of the time. Then, of course, Mank is paying homage to that era of Hollywood, and it's about the basis. It's about the basis of that film is about the making of another black and white film. So
Yeah.
to me, I was fully willing to justify that. But here, and amongst other projects that have done that recently, Black Mirror, Roma, I'm quite assertive in the fact that it just feels like they're trying and feeling to stand out, a cry for critical attention. I think within this film you settle into it, but that there just remains the sense of desperation and also kind of arrogance, where you're like, I mean,
Yes,
yeah,
it
it's
does
it's
come
kind
off
of
that way
like
for me a
it's
little
kind
bit.
of a dichotomy because it's kind of like, oh, I'm not secure enough in this film that I think it'll get enough attention. Let's make it black and white. But then also the arrogance of, oh, look how good this is. I'm gonna make this a
Yeah.
special film. This is special. We're special because we're black and white.
Agreed. I don't think Black and White particularly adds anything to it anyway, to be honest, man. And it's weird because I really like these two actors, John David Washington and Zendaya. I think they're absolutely fantastic here. This is probably the two performances I think that this is the best they've been in a film. But that being said, I do think because it's black and white, it's trying to be something that it isn't, and because because the film spends so much time with these two characters. I mean, they're the only characters in the film. It is it's. I kind of feel like it's trying to do that move, like even if it doesn't complement the narrative. Like sometimes it
Yeah,
feels like you need to break
exactly.
away from them, but then it kind of feels like, oh no, just to be different, we've got to stick with these two characters in the same room. Sorry, for the same house, the whole movie, and it's not exactly a very short movie, really. Particularly, it's just an average length movie. So when you look at that, it's I don't know. It kind of feels like it is trying to be different for different sake, doesn't it?
Yeah. And Zendaya had stated, that they were doing the black and white as an homage to classic Hollywood. And I respect the use of 35 millimeter, which I had hoped Mank would use. But in a film like this, it makes no sense. The whole
Yeah.
crux of this film is a discussion on modern filmmaking and the criticism towards that. So an homage to classic Hollywood is nonsensical.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree, and a lot of the narrative in the film, a lot of the talking points, we'll get into it later on, probably in spoilers about race and politics and the modern filmmaking industry. It doesn't really line up with how the film is even made as a production, really. Do you know what I mean? Because it's we'll talk into a lot about in spoilers, but like you said, yeah, with the 35 millimeter, it's a nice touch, but with the black and white, and it seems like with its condemnation of modern Hollywood, it kind of makes no sense to have that sort of thing that tries to make it different in the black and white. So I don't know. I kind of find it was quite of a strange move myself. I think maybe it would. I think in my head I would probably excuse it if it was like set in the 40s or something like that, or these characters were making like a documentary about the old films like Casablanca, To Kill a Mockingbird, those kind of things. But no, it's a very strange film narratively that a lot of the components just don't blend together well, I don't think.
Yeah, and I actually went into this assuming that you'd be quite a fan of it. I don't really know your wide opinion of it, but this is on paper your kind of film. I would have thought because it's a day in the life type of film. Normal people doing normal
Yes,
people stuff.
yeah, and I do like that that trope, that being said, but and I do think the character dynamics are fantastic. And there's some incredible scenes here, like really good. But this film really seems to me like they've got the director and the filmmakers, whoever they may be, they have specific scenes that they want to have in the film. So they've got a scene where they're, this isn't really a spoiler because something that happens, but like they're making macaroni and cheese, or they've got a scene where they're talking in the bathroom and those kind of things. But they don't know how to pad the film with little scenes in the middle. So that kind of have to keep the discussion going just for the discussion's sake. So it kind of feels like the film sort of drags a little bit until it gets to really great scenes in different chunks. That's how it kind of felt for me. But that being said, I have to praise the performances and the dynamics between the characters. That is incredible.
I think that's a really good observation because there are, 3 or 4 really important conversations in the film. And then, yeah, the rest of it is just filler. And it
Yeah.
does feel like that.
Yes.
But, to go back to your previous point about the actors within the film, because there's, of course, only 2, as you mentioned. And, I haven't really seen either of them in a lot of things. Zendaya really only in Zapped, the Disney Channel original film, Shake It Up, and, the Spider-Man movies, and John David Washington just Tenet. So it feels like both Zendaya and John David Washington are doing something here that neither have done before. I can
Yeah.
sort of sense that without even the context of having seen that. It feels like they're doing something different, and I
Yes, it
think they're
does.
both really incredible. A scene which I'll reference just in sort of concept only because I don't want to give away anything. Is the authenticity scene near the end of the film, which we may go into talk about later. I think it just shows her incredible range because I believed her in that moment.
Yeah, oh, completely. I think you're spot on there, buddy, as always. And yeah, I mean, I think I think the fact that it is just with these two characters for the whole film, like they really did. Of course, they carried it, but I think they really, you know, th- I think with two actors who aren't as talented, this could have been even worse. To be honest with you, like not that it's an atrocious film. It's okay. Like I don't hate it or anything, but it's just I think these actors did a really good job of just just the line delivery is exceptional. It really is, and the script as well is pretty good. I have to say, it's very good, and yeah, I mean, massive kudos to those two actors. To be honest.
Yeah, and we've talked about how there is a lot of padding there, but the structure I think is admirable. The idea that it's just these two people in this one place. It comes across a lot more like a play than it does a film
It
because
does. It
it follows
absolutely
the
does.
the Aristotelian unities of time, place, and action, which is sort of that's the composition of a tragedy. So you would think that that's maybe what this film's gearing up to,
Yeah,
and
that's a really smart observation,
so
buddy.
that
Yeah.
that gives you that indication that may happen, but we'll not actually comment on how the film ends. That was sort of where my mind was at just based on its structure.
Yeah, I think it's a really fantastic observation, buddy. You're right. And on the subject of it being a play, I kind of feel like it feels like a play, or I felt it could be like a short film. To be honest, I really
Oh,
was.
absolutely. I mean, yeah, if you made this film 15 minutes in and out, way better.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic if it's a short film or a play. I know it doesn't. I just don't think the runtime or the just like the overall plot of the film. I don't think it warrants the runtime. I can't remember what the runtime was. If we're gonna hazard a guess, it'd be like 1 hour 50 or 1 hour 40 or something. Is it?
I think it was 1 hour 48.
Yeah, something like that. So yeah, I mean, I think a shorter runtime would have been a more enjoyable experience.
I think it would have
Yeah.
been appreciated by me. I mean, it sort of gears up to these 3 or 4 important conversations, and I think if you took one of them in isolation, made it a 10-minute film, had the context of the dispute a little bit, it's a
Yeah.
15-minute film. I think that's a more admirable piece. But
completely.
I think a big problem with this film is that it does feel like a real relationship between the two. But I think that the issue is that the relationship presented is so toxic that you would be happy to see them split up. So this whole dispute, I think the movie wants you to think like, what's going to happen? Is this going to
Yeah,
come out as a positive situation or a negative situation? But, they don't seem to be there doesn't seem to be enough good between them to invest in the relationship and hope that they salvage it. So the
agreed.
outcome of their dispute is kind of irrelevant. So I don't know if casual audiences will actually stick around.
Yeah, I think if for as a casual audience member, I think I would rather them just. I think I'd be happier if they. eh, I don't know. I don't know, mate, because I kind of feel like you were kind of saying, the film does build up to a tragedy, so it kind of does feel like, because we don't see many scenes of them happy together, it's hard to sort of buy that relationship. So it's just a casual
Hmm.
audience member. So I reckon, uh, I think maybe the long run time even hurts it a bit, because it almost extends that tragedy too long, whereas it sort of becomes a little bit uncomfortable, the arguing at points. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know. Yeah, I do think you're spot on, mate. I think it's hard to root for the relationship when you kind of feel like they shouldn't be together. You know what I mean?
I mean, I don't think that's a spoiler. That's sort of the whole crux of the film, that this
Yeah,
is
no, I don't
a
think it's a
an
spoiler at all.
argument,
Yeah,
right?
I think you're spot on.
You know,
Yeah.
but we watch a lot of films, from the channel, and there's a few that I think that we watch that we wouldn't watch otherwise. Is this one that you would have watched without me suggesting it?
Probably not, buddy. I'll be honest. I'll definitely be honest. That one, probably not. Although that being said, part of me is a little. Part of me is happy I watched it, because, as I say, it's another performance with the two actors under my belt, I can reference, and it's not a atrocious film. Like, there's a lot of stuff here I actually really like, to be honest, and I'll get more to that in the spoilers. But for the most part, no, I wouldn't probably have watched it though. What about yourself?
Yeah, I'm pretty firm in the fact that I probably wouldn't, especially not. I watched, I think, the day after it came out. We've been sitting on this one for a
We
while,
have, yeah.
because I've been sort of resistant to actually talking about it. But I actually watched it, the day after it came out, and that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah,
Sometimes I think there's a bit of intrigue around, sort of critically panned films, because I sort of want to form an opinion myself. I think
completely.
I'm more inclined to watch sort of a critically panned film than I am a critically praised one, because I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, that's a good film, I'll have a good time. But I'm kind of like that. There's a sense of curiosity
Oh,
with sort
completely.
of
Absolutely, mate.
reviled ones.
Absolutely, yeah. I agree completely.
I don't have anything further spoiler free wise. Do you have anything?
No, nothing for me, but I suppose that leads into the question, massive hit or piece of shit?
Matthew, I'm gonna give it a piece of shit.
Oh,
It's
that's the first one in
it's
a
the first
while.
in a while.
That's the first in a
Yeah.
while, yeah. Why?
What was the last one that we watched that was really terrible?
I don't know. I think maybe, I mean, I'll have a wee look at the mini review playlist here, but I think
Yeah, there was a new release. Like Freaky, I thought was great. That was definitely a massive hit.
Freaky was very good. So mini review playlist. We have, of course, Space Sweepers. We love that. What do we give Promising Young Woman? Massive hit.
We did not rate it.
Oh yeah, we did not rate that. Yeah, remember. Stardust. Massive hit. Did we?
Massive hit was our rating, yeah.
I suppose then the last one that we probably give a piece of shit to is probably you're looking at. I mean, I know for me it was definitely Men in Black International, but I can't remember like the.
Oh no, I gave a piece of shit recently. I'm confident.
Did you?
Yeah, like not. I mean,
Songbird. Songbird. Was
did
it
I give that I don't know. I think we just rated it because it was sort of a
potentially then?
it was
Yeah,
sort of a gripping film. Like it was entertaining.
it
I
was
mean, you can
entertaining.
cut this out if needs be, but like I'm kind of intrigued to
I'm intrigued
look
as
at it
well.
myself.
What was it? I mean, we're looking back here. It wasn't any of the really recent ones. It might have been a recent one, but not in the last week or two. It wasn't Tenet, was it?
It was Tenet.
Tenet.
Tenet was fucking trash.
Oh, first ones. This is the first piece of shit of the year, then. So it is for you.
Yeah, again, John David Washington shines in these shit films.
Yes. So
We tied it back,
we
Matthew.
tied
We
it back. We
tied it
always do.
back.
Talented podcasters. For me, I think it's such a difficult one. I will probably go massive hit. I will probably go massive hit in this, just because I think the performances really do carry this film, to be honest. And there's a lot of tropes in here I do quite like as well. But it's a weak massive hit. Do you know what I mean? It's bordering. It's sort of that middle bit, 6 out of 10ish. But yeah, I suppose if you want to move on to spoilers, then, bud.
Yes. So in regards to spoilers, of course, the entire conception of the film is about this domestic dispute between Malcolm and Marie, and we learn quite early on that the inciting incident to this argument is that Malcolm had forgot to thank Marie in his speech upon the premiere of his new film.
Yeah,
And initially, I think it did feel a bit petty, but the early revelation that the film was about her life, and he sort of goes on to to dispute that. He sort of claims later, that he had influences from all of his past
yeah,
girlfriends.
he does,
But
doesn't
based
he?
on the things that he says throughout the film and how emotionally abusive he is, so frequently in this film, I'm fully willing to rationalize her reasoning behind that.
Yeah,
I think from what we learn about his film, it was her life story.
yeah. No, I think so. I think that stands to reason that would be true, and it's an interesting question as to who we would sympathize more with later on in the film. Sorry, later on in the review. So I'm sure we'll get into it then
Hmm.
as
Yeah,
well.
because of course we learn later on, we sort of we're given pieces of information about their relationship and their past, throughout the film. And
Yeah,
of course we learn that, Marie had cheated on Malcolm, but then we see Malcolm's behavior towards Marie. He says a lot of things and he explains actions that he's committed, positive and negative. He says that, he would go to therapy with her, make sure, he was helping her get off drugs.
yeah,
But we also see, many exhibitions of emotionally abusive behavior throughout
we
the film
do.
as well. So it's kind of a struggle, and of course, I would say that cheating in a relationship is a very sinful act. But when this is your partner, like you can't really understand the context, because I don't
Yeah,
think we see enough of their life. This is one night, this is one argument in a year spanning relationship. So we have to assume a lot, and
we
from
do.
what
We
we
absolutely do.
see,
Yeah, there's no
Marie, I
flashbacks.
think,
Yeah,
yeah, no flashbacks. It's firm on the unity of time.
it
But
is.
I think from what we see, I sympathize more with Marie
Yeah,
by far.
I actually in agreement with that for sure, and I think towards at the start I was definitely sympathizing more with Malcolm. To be honest, I did think Marie's comments did come across as a little petty. But that being said, as you learn more about the two characters, although she did cheat on him, I have to sympathize with Marie a lot more. I think Malcolm comes off as very sort of spoilt and arrogant and sort of, I don't know. Jonathan David Washington does an amazing job because he makes him so dislikable, I think, for the most part.
Mhm.
That being said, like I think Zendaya makes her character a little bit dislikable as well. Like I don't really particularly love either of them, but I think the
Mm.
fact that I do sympathize a bit more with Marie, just given the what we have to assume, but we do have to assume quite a lot. You're right. You're definitely right.
Yeah, and like my sympathy changed entirely in the authenticity scene that I referenced before, where Zendaya's character says like, I fucked your friends, I stole from your mother, but then you find out that that's all a performance to prove that she is a great actress.
Yeah,
And I was 100% sold. I turned on Marie because I was so captivated by that performance within the
yeah,
performance, and
million
I thought it
percent.
was so impressive.
Oh, completely, absolutely, one of the best scenes in the film, I think. And one thing we did, well, I suppose I forgot to mention in non spoilers was that we sort of talked about the black and white trying to illustrate something that the film's not. It's trying to be grand. It's trying to be more appealing to critics, I suppose. But here it also has the credits at the start of the film, which also sort of seemed to me a little bit like trying to be different for different sake as well,
Yeah,
didn't it?
because I would say that there are three acceptable uses of black and white. When it was era appropriate, when you're making a film about that era, and when you're using it to send a message, like in To Kill a Mockingbird, which was released in the '60s. That was a metaphor for the division between white people and
Yeah.
black people at the time, which I love. But there's no message here.
Yes, I know 100%. It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit in with the narrative at all. Sure, it doesn't. And on the subject of the film doing things just for the sake of doing it, I kind of felt like I don't know. Maybe this. I don't know. Maybe this has come off as a quite a strange point, but did it maybe come off to you as like swearing for swearing's sake? Like it kind of felt like although the script is fantastic, it kind of felt like there was a bit like they just needed to throw in an F-bomb just here and that. Like I have no problem with swearing like at all, but it's just I don't
Yeah,
know. I just felt I don't know. I just felt like it got to a stage where I noticed it, and that's always an issue for me. If I like
yeah.
outright notice it in a serious film or a comedy or something, that's always I think that's where the line's been missed there. Not that I have a problem with it or anything. Like it's just an observation. I think.
Yeah, there's there's a scene now where Zendaya sort of uses the C word, I think 3 times,
Yeah.
but that's
So
sort
weird
of
seeing Americans say that.
well, it's very weird hearing an American say it, but it feels apt because she's kind of doing an impression of Malcolm, and it feels like he seems like the type to
Does he
sort
does?
of verbally
Yeah.
abuse Marie. So I mean, it contextually seems appropriate. But yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, of course there are people who speak like that, but
Yeah.
I feel like that yeah that's sort of an error in vocabulary when it's used every other word.
Yeah. That's potentially, mate. I think you're right. Yeah.
And one thing here, I think there's not a lot new here. I think this is basically shit marriage story. I don't know. Did you see that when it came out?
I didn't see it when it came out. I've seen part of it, mate. I remember watching it a few months ago or whatever, and never finished it. But from what I saw, it was very good.
Yeah. So I mean, this is essentially a shit marriage story. So conceptually, there's not something particularly new here. But one thing that I've never seen before, and it may be just a fact of the reason that Malcolm and Marie are such terrible communicators. But I've never seen before characters communicating their feelings by playing each other music. I really liked
Yeah.
it because this film is very dialogue dense. That there's conversation in every scene.
Yeah.
So sort of a quiet moment where they're just sat on a bench together, and she plays a music, plays a music, plays a song to represent her feelings. I thought it was something new and original.
Definitely. I think the use of jazz specifically here really complements the film. It's fantastic. And one thing that I really, really have to point out here, there's an incredible one shot at the start of the film where it's shot from outside the kitchen and it just follows the two characters about. I think it's absolutely incredible. And it actually lasts for a good 5 or 10 minutes. It's absolutely remarkable to open the film. Part of me thought it was going to be like a scenario where it was just going to be a one shot film. Like that would have been amazing, to be fair. If the full film was just one shot, that would have been great. I can't remember. I remember hearing something about the film 1918 was that way, but I'm not sure if that was true.
There's, is it that film or is it, yeah, it's 1917,
Sorry,
just to
1917.
be
Sorry.
pedantic. But yes, I think
Sorry.
there is a, yeah, I think there's like a no man's land sort of one take scene or something like that. I haven't had a chance to see it. I'm sure we'll talk about it in our war episode, which I have scheduled.
Completely. Yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
Yeah, absolutely.
you know, there's okay, we have to have this discussion, which
Yeah.
is, of the assertion within this film, that the Malcolm has, surrounding, criticism of black black cinema.
Hmm.
And there's been an article written by the Guardian on this, that I haven't had a chance to read, but I'd initially written this point, and I've essentially scripted it because I want to sort of convey what I'm trying to
Of
say,
course, mate. Of
but
course.
even
Yeah.
then I struggled.
No,
But
like,
I'm
go
just
for it.
so confused by this film because a lot of the discussions surround how white people interpret black cinema. The idea that people see films made by black people as political, and this sentiment, as I said, comes from Malcolm, who believes that white people overanalyze the message of a film and link it to the identity of the filmmaker, which he believes is ever changing. And it feels like Sam Levinson, the writer and director of the film, is using this film to sort of defend his right to make the film that we're watching. He's
Yeah,
a
totally.
white person making a film about the black experience, and within the film, it seems he's trying to shield himself from criticism by making that a topic of conversation within the film itself. But had he just made a film about a couple and their relationship tribulations, he would just be making a film about relationships. But in his efforts to say that anyone can make a film about anything, he has brought up the issue that people will address about his film to the foreground. He basically said, "This is what critics will say about my movie and will judge me for," and therefore the critics are just spoon-fed, apt criticism for his film.
I think I think you've absolutely smashed it there, mate. Spot on. And I think the fact that Sam Levinson draws attention to it and what is a scene that doesn't really fit in the current timeline of the film at the stage where it's included, I kind of feel like it just as I said, it draws attention to it. It makes it sort of an issue which critics can sort of rightly, I suppose, criticize. And I think the fact that the two actors in the film are black. I think the fact that I mean that's I think that's I think the fact that he draws attention to that as well kind of seems like he feels like he has to justify himself almost. Does it kind of
Yeah,
seem like that to you?
yeah, because I mean, of course, a white filmmaker or a filmmaker of any ethnicity can use an actor of any other ethnicity,
Yeah.
different to their own. But he makes this film not about the relationship we're watching. He makes it about blackness, and he's, he's using his words and having someone read them as though they're the thoughts of a black person, but they're the thoughts of him.
Yeah,
Because
it's a really smart point.
I think it's relevant because Malcolm is saying like, oh, this white woman from the LA Times, this is what she thinks about black cinema. But then that's Sam Levinson giving those thoughts to what he thinks the black community would think of people from
Yeah,
the white community
yeah,
interpreting black cinema. This
100%.
is why I didn't want to talk about this, because
No,
it's
I
such a
know.
complicated
I
thing
think.
to get across. Like I hope I'm approaching it with
Oh,
sensitivity,
I
but
think
I'm
you are. I
genuinely
think you're.
struggling to
No,
just
I think you've
word what
smashed
what
it.
I'm saying.
No, I think you've smashed it, buddy. And for me, and then maybe I know this is quite a strange idea, but I don't know. Maybe Sam Levinson was maybe better approaching sort of John David Washington and Zendaya for helping sort of write those scenes. I don't know. Maybe they did have a role in that. I'm not sure, but maybe. Yeah, because he's a a white filmmaker himself, and he's sort of assuming that's what a black person would think that a white reviewer would think of the black cinema. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It kind of
it's complex.
it is complex, and it kind of seems like uh, it seems like an assumption that he just draws unnecessary attention to in the film. I think it would have been. I think that the film would have been less complicated and less sort of. I mean, less convoluted and with less issues there if it just been that completely, or at least changed the idea to a significant degree. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I mean, I think that I think with as you maybe suggested, a co-writer or something, to
Yes.
provide
Yes.
influence, and to sort of get into the mind of maybe a black filmmaker sort of taking the place of Malcolm, if he sort of helped, or they help contribute to to the film. I think would have maybe
Absolutely,
been
mate.
a better
Completely.
a better result.
I think
But
so.
if
I
you want
think
to
so.
just take what Malcolm is saying on surface level, remove any depth from it, I was just going to ask you, do you think Malcolm's criticism is fair? Because I think I agree with what he's saying about reviewers. I think when you take away the discussion of ethnicity, I think I do agree that many reviewers like painfully overanalyze minute details and sort of use needlessly elaborate language to try and convince people that they're intelligent and informed on a concept
Yeah,
that they've sort of invented as a result of unnecessary inspection.
completely, buddy. I think that's a really great articulated point there. Because I suppose at the end of the day, as a reviewer, as a in the Hollywood, revered enterprise, it feels their agenda to come off as sophisticated and as articulate as possible about films, because I suppose then people would look at their review and think it holds more ground, it holds more gravity, because I don't know, but I think Malcolm's argument is definitely right. I think a lot of people, especially with, I think it's a little bit like unfair as well of some reviewers to think that because a film is made by a black person, or whatever ethnicity, it all like it that makes it almost political, like maybe because like maybe it's just a coincidence that the filmmaker was black, they just wanted to make a film, like it's not necessarily like a thing where like all black people want to make a film and that film must be political because they're black. Like that's not the case at all in all forms. So I think that is an unfair assumption for most critics as well. And I do think you're right, buddy. I think they would want to use the sophisticated language about those kind of as unfair assumptions to sort of suggest how their review holds more gravitas. And I suppose, like we were sort of saying, it fuels their agenda because they'll get more clicks, they'll get more responses and reviews. The reviews will be more applauded, I suppose. But
Mm.
yeah, it's an issue Hollywood's had for years, and especially with the Oscars. Like the Oscars is very very conservative in a lot of things, and it's only recently when they've sort of brought in a lot of celebrities to start hosting the Oscars. I think that's kind of changed a little bit, but it's always going to have that issue, I think.
Yeah, and like I think that we've sort of tried hard to kind of avoid that over analysis, because we don't really go into thematics necessarily. We
Yeah,
ask questions about the film, and
yeah,
we sort of discuss that with each other, but we don't like painfully nitpick or overanalyze, I think. And
yeah,
we're not sensationalists, so
yeah.
I think that's probably you're getting like to the true just opinion of the everyman, I think.
Yeah, oh, completely, buddy, completely. And there's not to say that, from my perspective, there's anything wrong with overanalyzing films. It's just that I think, I think that, so if you overanalyze a film, it kind of leads to unfair assumptions about the filmmakers and the filmmaking process in that instance. And it's sort of seen by Malcolm's argument here, I suppose, which is fair as well. And I think, you know, a lot of, at the end of the day, a lot of critics have to feel like they have to overanalyze a film to justify the role as a critic. Whereas a lot of the time, I suppose a film is just made to for the sake of to have a fun film. Do you know what I mean? And I think that kind of, it's kind of a truth that a lot of critics don't want to face, is that, yeah, a lot of films probably aren't as deep as they think they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is genuinely to you know get the word count in, because I
Oh
mean,
yeah, yeah, for
a
sure,
lot
for
of the
sure.
time, when you're working for the Guardian, or you're working for any online publication, you have to hit your word count. So there's a lot of waffle about,
There
you
is
know
waffle, a lot of waffle.
you know oh, shall we get into cast relationships before I actually give my opinion of the
Yeah,
film?
I know
It is.
exactly
So I
that.
mean, sometimes you just have to like trudge through the absolute wank of some reviews.
You do, you absolutely do, mate. You absolutely do. Hopefully, no one feels
And
that way about our reviews.
I mean, I think probably when we a lot of reviews for a film are 5 minutes long, and sometimes we talk for 40 minutes, and maybe sometimes it's I just feel that we talk about everything that's necessary, nothing more.
Yeah, agreed, agreed. And that's why I have time codes. You know, if you want to skip to the reviews, sorry, if you want to skip to the spoiler reviews or whatever, you can do so. But yeah, yeah, as you were, mate.
So I think another important conversation to have about this film is, of course, about the relationship presented. And this film ends with not a definitive conclusion. In a film where sort of I think that in a film where you watch a relationship deconstructed before you, I think conclusivity is essential, pretty much. Whether it's positive or negative an outcome, I think we need to see it. I said
Agreed.
before that there's such a mismatched, unpleasant couple. I mean, not necessarily mismatched, but I mean, there seems to be a lot of toxicity there.
Agreed.
I think that it doesn't matter what the outcome is, but you still need to see it.
You do.
Whether the damage to the relationship is irreparable is a question that needs answered. I think, there's a certain level of there's a certain level of arrogance within the film, as to how it's left. That this film would be like a dissected topic of conversation, and people will break down how long the relationship will last. I
Million
suppose that's
percent.
what we're doing now, but still, get
Mi-
over
A
yourself,
million
Marie.
percent. Yeah, I know it. I think the fact that there's not a proper conclusion there, we can see the relationship off, like sort of how it concludes, is a mistake. And maybe I don't know. Maybe this is me being a hypocrite and over analyzing this, but maybe it feels like for me it kind of feels like the filmmakers trying to get us to think. I suppose that the role of the filmmaker is to trying to get the audience to think at the end of the day. So maybe that's
Yeah,
the point I was trying to make was potentially Sam Levinson wants us to kind of think what they will be like, 5 years into the future when the camera stops rolling. But but from my perspective, when I say that, I kind of feel like I don't want to think that, because they don't
yeah,
work well together. Do you know what I mean? So
exactly.
I could understand that argument of Sam Levinson if he wanted us to think about their relationship off screen, uh, in a sense that if there was some bright sparks there that they did get along. But the fact that they didn't, it kind of brings the conclusion in my head. I would just rather see a definitive conclusion of them not being together by the end, if that makes
Yeah,
sense. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that is absolutely a relationship ruining argument. I think.
Yeah. Yeah. As in
Like,
like,
I think
yeah,
there
oh yeah,
were.
oh yeah, completely, yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
obviously, because everything was being dredged up within this sort of 2 hour exchange. Of course,
Yeah.
that damage was already there, but it wasn't brought to the foreground until this argument itself.
Hmm.
And even him mocking her attempted suicide, bringing it into that argument, like he's just
Disgusting.
at times
Yeah.
a disgusting individual.
Yeah.
So
100%.
yeah, I would have to continue my assertion that I'm Team Marie.
Team Marie, absolutely, mate. Any more remarks from yourself, Cal?
There's nothing else from me, Matthew. Anything more from you?
Nothing for me, buddy. I think this has been one of my favorite ones to record, just on the basis of, I think we like hopefully if people listen to this, we hope we didn't like waffle a lot. We just, like we said, like Callum was saying, we try to address the surface level, but also a little bit beneath that, but nothing more. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like we don't try to overanalyze it. And apologies if it comes across like we're overanalyzing a film and then criticizing people who overanalyze films. Like we don't mean to do that. We just kind of felt like we
Yeah,
had to talk about a lot of these
but
topics
I
because
think
so
because
did.
this raises such a question that we really had to think about it. I think completely ignoring that would be sort of reckless.
Oh yes,
Because
yes,
then
yeah,
I think films receive criticism, then film critics receive criticism from the filmmakers and from the viewers or the readers or whatever.
hmm
And, I think it would be easier to criticize us for just completely ignoring something as big as the questions presented here.
1,000,000%, mate. If you're going to be out of 10, Cam, what would you give it?
Well, going back to sort of a point that you made just a few minutes ago, I find this film very thought provoking, but none of the thoughts are
Good ones.
actually ones that I care about.
Yeah.
And they're also to the detriment of the film, because it made me ask questions about, should Sam Levinson have made this film? So it's it's a question that the film makes me ask that's to the detriment of the film itself. So it was thought provoking. I was engaged in the sense that I had to think a lot. I had to ask myself stuff, but I wasn't entertained whatsoever. John David Washington and Zendaya are incredible, and their performances are brilliant, but some of the dialogue is dreadful. And I think the structure is respectable, but the runtime and the the pace are sort of easy to criticize, I think. So entertainment very low. Quality, obviously I think having it in black and white doesn't necessarily decrease the quality, but it sort of decreases the integrity, because it does seem like a desperate outcry for attention.
Yeah, it does.
So that would sort of lessen it a little bit for me. And sort of the ending, I think is a problem. So I'd probably give the film a 5 out of 10.
5 out of 10. Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think you've absolutely smashed it there in that review. And for me, yeah, I think you're right. I would concur with the view that it kind of feels like the black and white, the credits at the start of the film, the pacing, the runtime, it kind of feels like it restricts the film, especially with the fact that it's set with the 3 units of time as well for the most part. So it kind of restricts the film in that sense. I would have actually liked to see more characters or flashbacks to the least, or yeah, I'd rather one of a cliche ending where like John David Washington, it was just all a thought at like the cinema ceremony or something like that, the awards ceremony.
Or
I
if
would
he
have liked
killed
that.
him,
Yeah,
I would have been
or
fine with
something like that.
that.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, I'd probably have to cap off at a 7.5. I think I think the performance is incredible. I love the script. I love certain scenes in this film. But yeah, not a bad film. I potentially, like, if people are watching this who like I really love this film, my review might have come off as quite negative. I hope it didn't. But I think it's a good film, but not like it's not anything special for me.
Yeah, I think with 2 worse actors, this movie would be unwatchable.
I agree.
I think
absolutely
I think the only thing making it watchable are John David Washington and Zendaya. So I mean that can't really be
yeah
much to the credit of the film. It's really my entire 5 out of 10 is credited to those 2 actors, because I think they're the only ones keeping it afloat whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree. I would absolutely agree with that. But yeah, I mean, that wraps up another mini, not so mini review, I suppose. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks very much for introducing me to another film, Cam. Appreciate that a lot. And yeah, stay tuned, guys, for the content coming up with. We're bringing back Cash for another Riverdale review, literally straight after this podcast. So that's why we look the same if you're listening at this point. And yeah, I hope you guys are all safe and well. Your family and friends are all safe and well too. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye bye.